Hello, this is Brooks Boliek, and today we have FCC Chairman Tom Wheeler visiting our newsroom, and I would like to say thank you.
Brooks, it's great to be here. Thank you.
So let's start with a question. That's what I do best. So define network neutrality for me.
Well, I think the concept is really better described as the open internet. And the idea that this great new tool called the internet, that there should be open access to it, and we need to make sure that people understand what the rules are, that those who run the pipes that make the internet can't block and can't discriminate against content. And that's what we're doing with our upcoming open internet order.
So why do we even need a rule?
So we're dealing with something that is fundamental here. The building block of 21st century economies is high-speed data communications. And the history of communications has always been that those who control the pipe have an incentive to leverage off of that control for their own economic gain. And what we're trying to say is that let's make sure that the pipes stay open, that competition flourishes, and that we don't repeat history.
And you think you have the authority to do that?
The court recently told us that we do have the authority. There were those who questioned it, but I think the court has just affirmed it.
Well, let's move. Even though the internet does flow over these devices, it increasingly flows over these devices, and we have problems with how these devices work. Basically, people say we don't have enough airwaves. Mm-hmm. So the commission has undertaken a big proceeding, several of them, to get more airwaves onto the marketplace. Right. So these things will work better for us. Right. What is the biggest step the FCC can take to make this thing better?
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head, that we have to have an informed spectrum policy that expands the use of spectrum and increases the efficiency of spectrum. The reality is, remember that old Mark Twain line says, "I'm putting all my money in real estate because I understand they ain't making it no more." That's the reality of spectrum. And so we have spectrum policy that was developed in an analog era, and we're now living in a digital era, and we have to adjust the policy so that we have the pathway capacity available for these new digital applications.
In a couple of days, you're going to circulate an order amongst your fellow colleagues on the 8th floor at the FCC that will transform some of the ways we use wireless technology. We're going to take airwaves from television stations of wireless technology, and we're going to transfer them eventually to this wireless technology. What's the biggest obstacle blocking that?
We're going to buy airwaves,
right?
From
buy
broadcasters.
them. Yes.
So what's the biggest obstacle? The whole thing. It's never been tried ever. This concept of an incentive auction, I like to describe it as a Rubik's Cube, okay? Where, you know how in Rubik's Cube there were those three revolving things on each side. On one side, you will have to run an auction where the broadcasters can sell their spectrum. Then, in the middle, the FCC has to repurpose the spectrum that is sold and reposition the broadcasters who don't sell, and then in the other part of the Rubik's Cube, take that repositioned spectrum and auction it off to wireless carriers. And it all has to be done at the same time. Nobody has ever tried this before. But it is the logical way to approach the challenges of how do you reallocate spectrum in a digital era.
Well, I've never been able to work one of those
I'm
Rubik's
with
Cubes. But you think that the FCC will be able to work this new Rubik's Cube so that we'll get enough broadcasters in to sell enough of their spectrums to satisfy the needs of the wireless industry?
We're creating a marketplace, a two-sided marketplace with us doing the traditional activities of the FCC in the middle. That marketplace will speak for itself as to whether the broadcasters sell and whether the price is right and whether the wireless companies buy. Our job is to create the marketplace. We aren't dictating anything, but we'll facilitate, we'll create the opportunity, and then we'll see what happens.
And you're not just dealing with the wireless marketplace, you're also dealing with the wireline marketplace, going all the way back nearly to the telegraph. You're going to sit there and it's like you've got a pair of pliers and you're going to cut the red wire or the blue wire and shut off our copper. How does the FCC decide which wire to cut? And are you sweating bullets when you're doing that?
Well, there's a real challenge. I'm sweating bullets all the time, Brooks. There's a real challenge here in what we call the IP transition, the transition from analog switch circuit networks into Internet Protocol networks. What we're doing right now is we're taking applications for trials to find out what the real impact of that would be. And what do I mean by impact? It's not what's the impact of technology or can you build the technology. We know how to build IP networks. It's the question of what is the impact of the new networks on the things that Americans have come to expect from their networks over the last 100 years. And I think those are 5 things: access, interconnection, consumer protection, public safety, and national security. And how do we port those over from the traditional analog networks into the new digital IP networks? And that's going to be where the sweat and bullets takes place, because it's not just a wholesale transplant and port over, but there are going to have to be some adjustments. There are going to have to be some new questions raised and new issues and new solutions sought. But it is a terribly defining moment for our country and for the nature of networks. So we got to get it right.
We hear a lot of talk on the Hill about redoing the 1996 Telecommunications Act, but it seems like to me that you at the FCC taking those 3 issues, and you have many more issues to deal with, but just taking those 3 issues, aren't you in effect redoing it at the FCC?
Well, one of the great things that the Congress did when they wrote the Telecom Act both in 1934 and then rewrote it in 1996 is to create the 4 corners of concepts of regulation, and then to say to the FCC, you need to use your expert agency skills to make determinations inside those 4 corners that get effectuated in the form of regulation. And that's what we're doing, and that's what we will continue to do, always looking to Congress for their statutory guidance. But right now we're operating under the rules that Congress told us to operate under.